Welcome, everybody, to our weekly webinar. And today's topic is going to be on a demographic topic, which is kind of in the news right now, and it is on the decline of the birth rate. Now, here's the thing. I mention this to people about the birth rate, and if they're not in a pediatric type practice, orthodontics, they often don't think that it applies to them because they're always thinking, hey, kids, come on. But the reality, of course, is there is a direct and an indirect implication of an area's viability based upon the number and the percentage of children within an area, whether that number is increasing or it's decreasing. So the thing that I'm kind of making mention of today is I want to talk about both the direct and the indirect impact of children in a community and how it's affecting the nation, consumption, and especially how it's affecting professional practice. This, by the way, is a big deal. And I'll be honest with you, there are a lot of people who can quote demographics or they have a data table, but they don't understand the implications of how the demographics are changing and what to do about it. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. I have a little slide presentation, which I think I pretty much always do. Let me just call that up, and we'll start with the first slide.
Great transition.
Thank you. Well, I am a professional. Don't try this at home.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, I'm Scott McDonald. That's Mike Green. Say hi, Mike.
Hi.
Thank you. Impact of the declining birth rates. Now, listen, here's something you want to know. If you want to know the future of an area, study the distribution of children. Now, that is a general truism. But if you want to know what's going to happen in 20 years, and a lot of people are going to be in practice easily that long, they got to know about the young folks. Now, here, stick with me here. Back in the 1960s, Paul Ehrlich came out with the population bomb, and people have been believing this Malthusian stuff for a long time. Malthus was a demographer back in the 1800s in London. And he predicted absolutely mankind is doomed because we can't produce sufficient food to feed the increasing size of the population. That's what they referred to as the Malthusian crisis. Now, he had the idea that war and pestilence, famine, was a good thing because it would tend to thin the herd and make it so that mankind could proceed. Malthus was wrong, okay? And everybody pretty much who's a demographer knows that. The guy was way wrong. And especially as Ehrlich got up into the 60s, he had a lot of people going, yeah, too many people, it's destroying the earth. And of course, we've all heard about the New Green Deal in which the earth is going to be doomed in 12 years or less, largely because of overpopulation. Well, the reality, of course, is we're now in an anti-Malthusian crisis, meaning we do not have enough children. And I'm saying that in the United States, as well as in many countries throughout the earth. Quick thought. For a population to remain stable, in other words, where it's neither gaining nor losing population, it needs a birth per woman of 2.1 children. That's stable. The United States right now, with all of its popularity and people fighting to get in here and cross the borders, we are at 1.88. Now, that includes illegal aliens, may I point out, who have a higher birth rate. The fact is, we need more kids, and in many parts of the United States, many parts, this is looking really grim. I'll go through some statistics in a minute, but this year, births fell to a 32-year low. Now, I'll talk about why in a second, but the implications are there are not going to be sufficient children to support a practice in 10 to 15 years in many parts of the United States. Now, there are 2 states right now that do have a replacement rate of 2.1 or more. One happens to be South Dakota, and the other happens to be Utah. Now, the thing is, there's only 2. Everybody else is losing population, so they're depending upon an increase in migration in order to sustain the population. And they go, there's plenty of people coming. We'll talk about that. And by the way, Jonathan Last, who wrote the book, What to Expect When No One's Expecting, and of course the book The Empty Cradle, and of course Ben Wattenberg's wonderful demographic books about birth rates. Well, they're great references, but they're kind of abstract in most people's minds. I want to talk about the reality of how the birth rate's going to affect where you're practicing and the future value of that office. Now, why is there a decline? Well, a lot of demographers have put it down to four primary reasons. Number one, education and professional options for women are greater now than they have ever been. At a time after World War II, when the men came home from war and the women said, I want to have a baby because I've been putting this off for a long time, it wasn't as though women couldn't work. World War II really made it so that there was a demand for women in the workplace, but they had so many more options in education and professionalism and income that a lot of women said, I would rather have fewer children and more opportunity to earn. So with education and professional options for women, the birth rate has naturally declined since the height of the baby boom back in the 1960s. It's gone up and down and up and down and up and down, but a slow decline over time. There is also an anti-family, anti-growth bias within our culture right now. And part of that is people go, well, I want to have time for me. I want to travel. I want to eat out. And they do. It's kind of a feeling, though, among some places that I can't afford kids, but more, I don't like kids. There are a lot of people who just don't care for children. I'm not making a judgment about that. I'm just saying it's simply true. Now, I'll explain a little bit more. But with that idea, remember, it used to be station wagons could accommodate 6 or 7 children. Now, it's very rare to find a 6-passenger van in many states in the United States, and in some states, it's all but illegal. There's also the perception of an economic burden. And you know, look, I've got 5 children. I'll be full disclosure here, and kids are expensive when they're of a certain age. The truth is, of course, when they're babies, they don't cost that much. And when they get to be adults, self-supporting, they don't cost that much either. And some people have the idea that they have to support their children into their 30s. Well, that's a perceived economic burden that children represent. I'll be fair, my kids are pretty much independent. Even my youngest, who's in college, is supporting himself. He can afford to do that during the summers, and scholarships and grants and such. So the perception is really a perception, not a reality, absolutely. And I also have to point out an obvious point. If Social Security goes down, which the declining birth rate suggests is a serious possibility, only those people that happen to have another generation can be supported through their elderly years. So just to let you know, it does change over time. I'm not trying to say that you ought to have kids. I'm just saying there is sometimes a difference between the perception and the reality of a demographic trend. There is one fourth item, which sometimes people don't realize, and that is religion has a lot to do with birth rate. Only those nations and those states that have an active religious population tend to think that family is an institution worth preserving as much as people who are not getting married and don't want to have kids. They tend to be the least religious within the United States. There's a close correlation between those. And the same thing's true in world governments. I'm not trying to make a case one way or the other, except to say demographers are tracking these as the 4 reasons why it's happening. Now, as I mentioned, there is a direct impact and an indirect impact upon having children. The reason I bring it up is because if you're in the business of trying to help doctors figure out where to put a practice, you have to make a very serious read on what the direct and indirect impact is going to be if a practice depends upon those factors regarding children. So pediatricians, pediatric dentists, orthodontists, pediatric endocrinologists, ENTs, even veterinarians have to know that there is going to be an impact when there are more or fewer children. So, as I mentioned, pediatric practices are going to feel it more than anybody else. Pediatricians perhaps more than anybody, because regardless of demographic character, the more babies born, the more work they have. Pediatric dentists and orthodontists, for example, don't have that quite as much. You usually have to have parents who are motivated for one reason or another to seek care for their children. But it is undoubtedly true that with direct impact, pediatric practices will do better when there are more children. You have to know where the children are not only increasing, but also represent a large percentage of the population. In the primary groups of 0 to 4, 5 to 9, and 10 to 14, those are what they call age cohorts. Usually you're looking for a population of about 5.7 to 6.2. That'll be an average of the percentage of the general population. But you also have to track the actual census of the number of children to say, is the patient base sufficiently large to support the kind of practice I have? Now, I don't want to lose you in the weeds here, but that's kind of how we have to think. Now, direct impact also means that a community with lots more children will have more schools and more civic expenditures, like a community pool or a parks, things like that, because as those number of children go up, there's a direct budgetary impact to the cities. But let's talk about the indirect impact if you're not having to have a lot of children or teens in your practice. Here's a fact. Childless consumption versus the traditional consumption makes a difference. So if you have a distribution of normal households, families with kids, regardless of their age, they will tend to consume things differently than people who have no children at all. Now, there is a thing that happens with time where children will move out of the house, and I know those of you who may have children still living there, regardless of their age, you'll think they'll never leave. Well, they eventually kind of wander off on their own. But people without children, households with no children, are very different than households with children regardless of age. And that's because they are a spark or a motivation to buy certain things. So, for example, a house. People are happy to live in an apartment if they have no kids because 1, 2 bedrooms, no big deal. But if you happen to have a couple little rugrats hanging around, having a 3-bedroom home with 2 baths or more, that all of a sudden becomes a desirable thing. And you buy things for your house like barbecues. A major demographic study was done to figure out where are barbecues being sold. They're sold every time where there are more people that have children present. The same thing is true of clothing, shoes, books, and all kinds of other stuff. And that's a traditional consumption pattern. Reduce the number of children and people buy less stuff. Now they'll consume more things like eating out or travel, particularly foreign travel. That's what happens with childless consumption. I'm not trying to say it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's true. Now, one of the other indirect impacts that's rather significant is the Social Security and retirement safety net. We all talk about, oh, I want Social Security to be there. But you know that the reality, and I'm sure everybody here knows, that if you don't have as many people living, paying into the Social Security system, the whole plan is to go bankrupt because it's kind of a Ponzi scheme. They're not taking your Social Security payments and putting it off into the distant future. And the same thing's true of your retirement plans. It's usually spent almost immediately. So when the population of children goes down and there are fewer people working and consuming in a community, you're in trouble if the birth rate is reduced. Now you may think, well, so what? We're a big nation. Yes, we are, but there are some states that have a birth rate that is down to 1.49. And most of those are up in the Northeast. Maine, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. Look, they don't have, and worse, by the way, bottom of the heap, Rhode Island. The Social Security and retirement plans within those states is going to be suffering because more people are retiring than starting work. Then there's the other thing, which is also kind of a non sequitur in people's minds. The cost of housing within locations that do not have children is almost always higher than in those places that have children. In short, the cities that have the lowest birth rates and have the lowest number of children also don't demand new housing or affordable housing to be built. The market doesn't really support it. People are happy to live in apartments as they grow old. So the cost of housing and the cost of living actually has an inverse relationship with the number of children within an area. That's a scary thought, not just if you're in a business that is dealing with kids and teens. It's a problem if you happen to live in an area and you hope that young families are going to move in and buy your house or your practice, and if they can't afford to go there, you may be in trouble. Now, where is the birth rate increasing? Now, as I mentioned, South Dakota and Utah are the highest. Remember, that's 2.1, 2.23, 2.12 population per woman. Now, Nebraska, Alaska, Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, Texas, Arkansas, they're so close to the cusp of 1.9 that they're not really going to have a problem, because almost all of them are going to have either in-country migration or foreign country migration that will tend to raise it up to above that replacement rate. So in that way, a state like Arkansas, particularly in the Northwest section, is showing growth. Now, let's talk about where the birth rate is decreasing. Now, we're taking these kind of in inverse order. If you look at Pennsylvania and California, they are tied at 1.60 children per woman. Remember, these two states have a significant number of foreign migrants who come here. That means that the people who've been here for a longer time are going to become, it becomes the people who've been there for a long time are older, and they're growing older quickly. New York, Colorado, Connecticut, and boy, when you get down to Connecticut at 1.59 children per woman, that's not good. In Maine, I've often made the joke that with the last child in Maine, please just turn off the lights when they leave, because it's going to get dark. Oregon, surprisingly enough, while it has a lot of people moving from out of the state, is showing a very low birth rate. New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts with 1.51, and then at the bottom of the heap is Rhode Island, which is incrementally, by the way, just below Massachusetts. Now, you'll notice this is a regionalized thing, with New England having the worst off situation. I'm not trying to say you can't have a good practice there or that everybody's doomed, but I am saying if we're looking at the long-term prognostication, and 10 years is what I'm really saying, the states on this list are going to have a harder and harder time attracting non-geriatric patients and practices. That makes things bad. And even within the state, like New York, there are some parts which are doing okay, and others that are far below 1.4 births per woman. Now, here's a little map that shows where the problems lie and where they don't. You'll note that the lighter colors are those that have the worst total fertility rate, or TFR. This is actually from 2013, and unfortunately, it's renewed itself. It's just getting a little worse every year. New England is very light colored, and you'll notice that Colorado right there is not too so great, but that strip going from North Dakota down to Texas is showing some significant potential, especially with Iowa hanging out to the side. Idaho, Utah, and Arizona are also a place where much easier to have a practice with children, but are also having the ancillary benefits of showing significant growth, not just from migration, but also from people who are setting up homes that are more permanent. Now, the homeless problem is not really reflected carefully here, but it's something for you to keep in mind. A homeless population typically has a very low birth rate. That's not to be surprised, because people don't want to raise their kids where there aren't kids. All right, now let me just kind of wrap up. We are running the double nickels discount right now. I just want to make sure if you go into order anything except our state briefing, you can get the double nickels, which is $55 off everything we offer. I strongly recommend you look. We may take this promotion down soon, so please, if you're interested at all of any of our products and services, do it now. We're going to have another promotion pretty quickly, which is a value-added promotion, which means you get something for a low price. So, Mike, anything you want to add?
I think the biggest thing I want to add is make sure you spell Nichols right, because it doesn't look right when you spell it right. It's one of those words, right?
Right. I can't tell you how many times we had to respell it. All right, I'll just admit.
Just to do a double check.
That's all I'm saying.
It's Scott, it's really interesting, this topic you're talking about. Back when I was a wee high schooler, I was on the debate team, and we talked about the population bomb book all the time and how it was impacting environmental issues and all these different things. Now, of course, as a small high schooler, we were highly influenced by this. We didn't realize how much trajectory was happening with this topic, but it was interesting to study this thing and how it was going to impact, or how it was supposed to impact, again, negatively, all of these things. And now here we are 25 years later looking at how it's impacting things in the opposite way because of that effect. So I think that is a very, very interesting topic. Now, Scott, you've left me 9 minutes. Now I'm not going to
Make good use of a mic.
But I am going to go through my presentation. We might run a minute or two over, but I do think that this topic is really important and really plays into what we're talking about, what Scott was talking about with families. I want to make sure, I've got to get my presentation going here. Come on. There we go. I want to make sure that you as a practice owner, as you're talking about population and how it impacts, again, not if you're in Utah or South Dakota, maybe you are in one of those two states, but if you're in a different state, how the family makeup is looking in your area and how you as a practice owner are going to attract those families to your practice. So I have a few ideas I want to get through here that kind of shares, in my opinion, what a family is and what it looks like. Now, I think the first thing is, what is it that defines a family in your particular area? The hard thing is it a traditional nuclear family like we might assume? Is it a family that has grandparents that live in the household, as it does in many, many places in the country? Is it a single parent family? Is it a gay or lesbian family? Is it a family that has 1,000 kids? Not really 1,000, but if you live in Utah very long, you see. So the key here is that on those things, you have to be agnostic to that. And again, quick pitch for demographics. That's why these reports are so important, because you have to truly have an understanding of what the family makeup is in your particular area, what it is that's going to turn them on, what is it that's going to create an offer for them. You have to understand that and accept it, and then create an offer based on that information, rather than just saying, well, this is the family that I grew up in this part of the country. I'm going to take that information and that data and the offers that may have worked for me or my family, and I'm going to apply it to this area that I'm practicing in. In most cases, that does not work, or it doesn't work as well as if you took the time to really diagnose and understand what the families want in your area. So let's go through that real quickly. What do families want? Now, if you go back to some of my presentations that I've done on this webinar and some of the other trainings that I've done on marketing for professional practices, you know that I typically will classify psychographic segments into one of three categories. There's family focused, there's money focused, and then there's self-focused. My experience shows me that most psychographic segments can, in a broad sense, fit into one of these three categories. Now, when we're talking about just families, you might think that all families are going to go into that family-focused category, but the truth is that's not correct. They actually will fall into one of those three categories. So let's go through each of those individually and look at what it is that those groups want. So if you're a family-focused a household, you're looking at convenience, you're looking at reputation, you're looking at the doctor having a real good personality, and they're going to connect really well with the kids that you're going to bring to the practice. They want the doctor to look like them. They want the doctor to be a family man or a family woman. They want to share stories about their kids so you could share stories about your kids. They want to have that connection. So they want you as the doctor to look and act like them. They want the office to be family-oriented. They're not going to be comfortable bringing their screamy, snotty-nosed kids into your dental spa. They're just not going to be comfortable doing that. And so you've got to make sure that the office, if you're going after a family-focused psychographic segment, and you have enough of them in your area, that you are creating an environment that they're going to be comfortable in. The last one is that they are highly influenced by referrals. So if they move into town and their neighbor across the street or the person they go to church with or whatever makes a recommendation for you as a practice owner, as a doctor, they are going to be really highly influenced by that, regardless of price, regardless of any other factors. They're going to be highly influenced by that. Okay, so let's talk about money-focused families. Money-focused families, and I think most people immediately think that this is a low-income family, but often is not the case. Sometimes some of the highest income families are super money focused in that they want to make sure they're getting a great value for the dollars that they're spending. Money focused practices are always looking for an offer. They're looking for often a money savings offer, and we'll see some examples of that here in a few minutes. They're looking for loss leader opportunities. They're looking for that, hey, you'll get this free if you come in for the free consultation or some of those things. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at payment flexibility. So you will want to make sure that it's very clear that they have many options that they can utilize for payment, from possibly in-house financing to third-party financing, payment plans, cash discounts, all of those different options. They're going to be really attracted to that. They're also going to be attracted to speed. They want to be able to book the appointment and be able to get to the doctor that same day. This is particularly true in a low-income market area. They are traditionally, and again, not to make a broad generalization, but oftentimes lower-income families are not thinking super far ahead. And so they are used to calling up and going right in and being able to see that doctor quickly and not thinking that there's any consequence or whatever because of that. So speed is a very important thing to them. They want to make sure there's a very, very clear value for their dollar. And this is particularly true for money-focused families that are on the higher income scale. They want to make sure that that value is super, super clear. Another thing that works really, really well with money-focused families is in-house plans. That's something that's really attractive to them. Okay, so let's look at self-focus. Now, oftentimes this is retirement age families or near retirement age. They're looking for cosmetics. They're looking for the latest and greatest technology. They're looking to make sure that that doctor is very, very competent. That's why oftentimes younger doctors have a harder time building credibility with self-focused psychographic segment families, because they are to an age where they want to be picky. And so a younger doctor has a hard time typically building that confidence in them. They also want value-added offers. They want to get the perks. Again, the dental spa works really well for this group because they want to not only get their dental work done, but they want to have the other benefits, the massage, the Botox, all these other things that go along with it. So now that I've given you that example of what families want in the different categories, I am going to share some ways that you can talk to these people very, very specifically. And whenever I do this, I always think of this quote. Don't let this freak you out. But the good old Joker in the Batman series says, if you're good at something, never do it for free. And so I often get hesitant when I share these specific strategies because, frankly, we're really good at them. And I feel like sometimes that I just throw those out there and then a doctor will try them, but they don't do it in the right way. And they come back and say, hey, why didn't this happen? And I said, it's because you didn't do this, 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 and this. And I'm sure it's the same way. It'd be the same way if I tried to do a root canal or whatever. I'm sure I would do a terrible job because I'm not a dentist. I'm a marketer. So with that said, and with that understanding, let me give you a couple of quick ways that you can go through those specific psychographic segments and do offers that will be appealing to them. For the family-focused offer, you want to make sure that you're doing a cultural slow burn strategy, at least that's what we call it, meaning that on Facebook, on community involvement, that you're really building the culture of your practice, particularly if you're an orthodontist or pediatric dentist. This is extremely important. You have to build that culture. And yes, culture-based strategies don't pay off as quick, but they do pay off big in the end. And so you have to be constantly building the culture of your office and demonstrating that to the people that you're talking to. The next thing is to have a time or event triggered advertising and strategy. So when you have a new person that moves in, guess what? We can know that really, really well through something like Facebook that tells us that somebody's new move to town, so we can deliver them directly a new move-in type special to that family-focused psychographic group. The next one on the money focused, let me give you a couple of quick ideas that you can do with that. Money focused families are typically highly influenced by direct marketing. Facebook ads, Google ads, direct mail after it qualifies. And I won't go into that right this second, and we've done that other times, of when it is that you can feel okay about sending a direct mail. Also, aggressive referral programs work really well with money-focused families in a particular psychographic segment. The last one is self-focused. Very timely and specific service offers. Dental implants, for example, are best marketed in the first 3 weeks of July. Why? Because we've done the data, we've looked at the results, and we've seen exactly when people are looking at dental implants. And guess what? Maybe you knew this and maybe you didn't, but the first 3 weeks of July is one of the best times of the year to advertise for dental implants. The second one is what we call the golf course strategy, meaning that you're taking them on the wine and cheese things, the golf outings, all those other networking type events, and you're building high level relationships with people that, again, look like you, talk like you, act like you. The last one that we'll share with the self-focus is the build a dream strategy, that you are truly saying, hey, you're at an age, maybe you're getting back on the dating scene after a 20-year marriage and divorce. Maybe you're looking for that new career to really hang your hat on as you finish out your career. You're building out that dream, and you're going to give them the cosmetic or the dental treatments that are going to really help them reach that next level in their career. Okay, really, really quick, I'm just going to show you a couple of quick examples. These are real life offers that I found that kind of match these different areas. This first one really quick is an orthodontic practice, is a Facebook post. You know, they're giving away tickets to a playoff game, it looks like, for basketball. And they've got competing people. Maybe the two doctors in the office have different ideas of who they think might win. But the thing I want you to notice is look down on that, how much engagement there is. 437 likes, 286 comments, 230 shares. When was the last time one of your Facebook posts got that much response? Probably been a while. So that's an example of building culture within your practice and talking to that base family. The second one I really like, it's an online special. So it's talking to people that are going to be online, families that are looking at technology, and it's that new patient special. The third one I love is talking to families that don't have insurance. Now that's not going to be a Medicaid family, and that's not going to be probably a high fee-for-service type family. That's the one in the middle. The bread and butter families who have not or have had to cut, don't qualify for Medicaid, but have had to cut insurance out of the family budget. It talks to them really, really well. The next one, great doctor. This is a doctor that I know personally quite well. He has done a fantastic job talking to the Hispanic population in his particular area. Great doctor, great orthodontist, and who is not Hispanic, but speaks Spanish fluently. And so he is targeting them specifically by speaking to them in their language. And that's an important thing. The last one I'll share is, again, dental spa. You can tell that that particular ad looks very, very different than a pediatric office or an orthodontic office. And the last one is, again, that free teeth whitening offer. That's that value add. It's bringing in that self-focused doctor to their practice. And Mike Green, Mike at DrDemographics.com is how you can reach me. These are great strategies and strategies that you can use. And I know I went fast, but if you're intimidated by these strategies, then it's something that you probably ought to consider maybe getting a little help on. You can do that. That's something that we can offer, that we can help you. And all you have to do is go to DrDemographics.com, pull down the marketing tab, and we have everything from marketing strategies and reports, on-site visits where I can come to your office and train you and your staff, all the way down to a telephone consultation where we can talk through your marketing strategies and see if we can help move you in the right direction. Scott, I'm done. I'm out.
Mike, I got to tell you something. That was great. It's one of your best ones you've done.
Thank you.
I hope that our viewers will appreciate just how good the information is that you shared. And of course, I am brilliant. My gosh. Yeah. Of course, everybody knows that. But seriously, Mike, that was very good.
Thank you.
And I'm only hoping that people will take advantage of the information that we offer. So I think we're just about as out of time as we can be. I want to thank you again. If you have friends and neighbors who'd like to be a part of our webinar and podcast, Mike, how do they sign up for that again?
Well, a couple ways. They can just go to drdemographics.com and scroll down on the page a little bit, and they'll see the link to the webinar. That's probably the easiest way. Just click on that, and it'll bring them right to the page that they sign up.
All right, terrific. And again, thanks so much, everybody, for watching. We appreciate you very much, and let us know how we can help you find the perfect place to put a practice and to promote the heck out of it so you'll be rich and famous. Take care.
We'll see you next week.